So the whole deal is we are going for starch. And when you're feeding cottonseed, you're not having as much starch. And so when we would use it for whole cottonseed, we use it for protein, we would use it for fiber. It's not going to be a starch substitute.
It's not going to put weight on your calves.
Yes, and it's not going to improve the marbling in and of itself. Great supplement for cows, good in a feedlot diet, but it doesn't replace starch.
It's just part of it.
Yes, right, 5%, 10%.
So yeah, that'd be the least amount of your diet. You want the corn, the most, and then the cottonseed would be a small percentage.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Tammy, can we take a 2 or 3 minute break?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let me ask you this. I want a raise of hands. Are you in for another talk, or would you rather have a short talk? How many of you want a short talk, like 30 minutes?
Talking about for this next section?
For this next session. Short talk? Okay. I'll alter the order. Ignore your schedule completely. Okay? Yeah. Okay. Take a break. We'll put another one out. We're going to...
Now he must be talking to me well for the proud steers you're feeding.
It's on here.
That's the way we've all.
Sorry about it.
And I must have yeah. Good God. I priced anything you want to get.
So is he, so are they trying to change? They're trying to up it.
Well, this is actually, but this is also why you're supposed to pay. No, but pretty much we pretty much hit 5. Except for Alice probably didn't have a very good protein on TDN. And we didn't test it. Well, but not for these well, if he's using your formula, we don't know it.
I can tell when I get half of your thing because it's full of damn cottonseed. Yeah.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, sometimes. Like
That's what
those
tells me
Sam called me. She said that instead of being able to take
baby, that is why.
That's good because we need to leave
If you're zooming, do they have to mail you all this stuff?
Yeah.
Postage would eat it up as thick as these things are.
We're emailing as much of it as we can. Several of them didn't want it emailed, they wanted it mailed. Thanks of animal health.
He called me to tell you that. I was not that good, but our little steaks were pretty close. They weren't that good. But you can't feed them too much, though. He'll tell you that they don't want to flex. They don't want to just rest like that. That's what the flesh is. Let me tell you. You want this? We had squirrels. What happened to Daddy's face? His bottle feet. And been over too far. And so, the other day, that is right. And so he took the bottle and got them started. You know, they're not okay. They're not good for anything. One don't take. They hit me what they
I'm here.
Tired of sitting in this chair.
God damn, I know it, man. They need some padding about that thick.
I wore it all the way down to the frame on this one. We couldn't get the clicker thing to work. So I'm having to run the slides for it.
Yeah, you need another chair. That's something.
we would always go to the
Well, we ain't got long. He's going to this is pretty short run on this.
One thing about him, that son gets to talking. He lets it roll.
He's got plenty of better throw.
I like him.
He has brought stuff back from 30 years ago to me tonight. He's taught me a bunch.
That's the bad thing about
Hey,
it.
son of a bitch, he knows his
He's
stuff.
got so much to tell.
Well, we got him.
No.
Got all the fat on the cow.
Yeah. He didn't-
Well, see, he done. I like to pick up bits and pieces of shit. And I have never in my life give a cow. Been raising cows 40 years. Never give one whole corn.
But see, that looks more like
But
Wagyu.
he's saying don't give it to a cow, give it to a cow. I didn't know that.
But see, that's what he's got.
Don't chew hard. That's what he was getting. Looking in the dial. Seeing real grains.
But it makes good sense. You think about
You
it.
ever looked at one?
These damn deer hunters feed these deer whole corn, but a deer's got more teeth than a cow. They'll chew that shit up, and that's why they fat.
Picking it
Yeah,
and popping it.
yeah.
Acres the same way.
I mean, I
And that's what
maybe
we
16.
was talking about that. I'm like, yeah, I said the deer is actually processed better than cows process once they mature.
And if you notice, a deer's got a slight bit of marbling in them if they've been on corn. Cause I raised one off one time and killed, just like a cow.
They don't get the muscular fat, but they get
No,
seam fat.
it's seam fat, and you can cut that tendon out there. Cause we used to process ours. I still got all my stuff. I've got grind, you name it. And everybody talk about take a small deer makes the best meat. That's wrong. You can take a big buck and cut them tendons out of him and cube it.
Pull all that out of it.
Yeah.
I got a friend of mine out in Alabama. He gets what they call a meat tag every year. And he said people talk about meat bucks and stuff. He said, I want the
Biggest damn mule deer you can get.
and he killed something way over 300 pounds. And he said, you won't see any difference in meat quality unless it's hard and rough. He said, I'll tell you. He said, the big mule deer bucks are hit hard and rough. He said, I leave them alone.
You can't-
And I'll shoot big whitetails.
That's right.
And he said, when they come out of rut, he said, I'll shoot them. And he said, the meat quality, flavor-wise, rut mule deer,
You can't eat it.
but he's, he said the same thing. He shot them off of grain field, shot them off of wheat, shot them off of barley. He said it don't matter what it is, big deer, it's going to be just as good if you process it.
If you don't cut them tendons and all out of that though, you can't eat it.
They break a deer down right away, pull the back straps off of it. All that back strap is going to do.
It's all up. All right, he's back.
So she had to come back and
Girl, get out of my way.
I was right.
There's good news and there's bad news. This is short, but I lied. Okay, it is the shortest of my remaining stuff put together. And I'm skipping ahead in order to follow up the acidosis because there's a gentleman who won Bovine Practitioner of the Year several years ago. His name is Del Miles. Del is one of the smartest veterinarians in the country. He oversees the animal health for about 5 to 10 million head of cattle a year through his Great Plains veterinary practice with Bob Smith from Oklahoma. And he told me 20-some years ago that they had the data from the cattle that 70 to 75% of all respiratory illnesses were due to mismanagement of feed. that we blame it on congregating cattle, but that what it is cattle that are pushed too hard, cattle that are worked too hard, cattle that are stressed. And what you have when you have acidosis, when you have an animal that is stressed, where you're running them through the chute too loud, and they're building up their adrenaline, that's glucocorticoid, that's an immune suppressant. So then you put that on top of a diet change. And what happens then when you get a diet change and you get inflammation in the digestive tract? Because how many of you have ever shown or worked with or fed sheep? We talked about enterotoxemia in sheep. But what we have to understand is that you get inflammation in the gut in cattle too. And when you do that, you get a diversion of blood flow to the inflamed area. And so what can happen is now you have a challenge in the lungs with bacteria or viruses, and that blood flow and the immune suppression is already being sent to the gut, and they can't fight off an inflammation in the lungs. And so the reality of this is I want to talk about just the data that's out there on the effects of animal health on efficiency and carcass characteristics. The impacts of inflammation, and I'm just going to read this. Recent studies in feedlot cattle have indicated that the incidence of bovine respiratory disease, maybe I'm going to read this, decreases both carcass weight and marbling. Mechanisms are not understood. Research in other species has demonstrated that during the acute phase response, pro-inflammatory cytokines promote skeletal muscle catabolism, that means breakdown, to supply amino acids and energy substrates for immune tissues. Further, during this early immune response, the liver changes its metabolic priorities to the production of acute phase proteins for use in host defense. Together, these dramatic shifts in systemic metabolism may explain the detrimental effects on performance and carcass traits commonly associated with BRD in feedlot calves. What I want you to understand from this is that these are systemic challenges. They're not just in the lungs, and that the animal's entire metabolism is changing. Okay, some work that was done at Oklahoma State with one of the most common diseases in newly received stock and feedlot cattle is bovine respiratory disease that accounts for approximately 75% of morbidity and over 50% mortality in feedlots. In a study of 406 heifers that received 2 or more treatments for BRD during the receiving period had markedly lower marbling scores, with a 25% reduction in the percentage of carcass grading choice or above for heifers that received versus heifers that received multiple treatments. So, the more we treat them, the sicker they are, the more marbling is hurt. Yeah.
Is that because they just weren't vaccinated as a calf or anything, or that's not even?
No, these university calves, they were vaccinated. So, if we look at some of the data, and I'm going to show you data slides just to let you know where I pull my numbers from for the economics portion, just so you know I didn't pull them clean out of thin air. Yes.
Do we have these yet?
We don't
Maybe
have
the
these
green
yet.
package?
No, this is next week's. He jumped ahead on you.
Because y'all said you wanted out here before 11:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll get them in next, or week after next pack.
Yeah, week after next. For those of you who need a babysitter, on the stay. Okay. Performance and carcass trait value for steers with or without respiratory tract lesions. What's a lesion? Every time an animal gets pneumonia, the lungs get slight tears. They're lesions. An interesting thing, if you are killing cattle for kosher, in order for cattle to be kosher, the lungs have to inflate. They have to be clean. from a religious standpoint, which means the lungs need to inflate. A lot of work was done in the 90s on using kosher kill plans, and what was found, and I may present some of this, an animal that gets sick, regardless of whether you have caught it or not, and they have determined that by abscesses on the lungs and by looking at the lungs. An animal that gets a respiratory incident already has respiratory lesions in the lungs. How effective do you think we are in identifying the sick animals? We're about 50% at best. There are cattle that never look sick, that come to the feed bump, that are just tough. And they're going to come all the time. And if they have a lung lesion from these studies, they didn't grade. A lot of them graded select in studies where their genetics would indicate that they should have been choice, either low or average choice at least. And so my goal in this whole thing is calm handling to reduce stress and calm diet adaptations, because we want to avoid something that's going to negatively impact our end product for the consumer. What this study showed, this is respiratory tract lesions. Average daily gain, if they were none, and I apologize, this is in kilograms, multiply by 2.2 to get pounds, if you're fast enough. 1.6 kilograms per day for no lesions, dropped to 1.4. That's about 0.3 of a pound, down to 1.17 kilograms if there was an active lesion. Marbling score goes down 2. The percent choice went to 0. These were high select cattle. Keep in mind, this was a 99 study. What I want you to just see is, though, that animal health is negative and it's progressive. Some work done at U.S. Meat Animal Research Center showed that lung lesions from respiratory disease were present in this study in 33% of steers at harvest, and were present in 37% of the steers that had been treated with antibiotics after weaning, and in 29% of the steers never diagnosed with a respiratory disease. Steers with lung lesions, and this is lung lesions regardless of treatment, had lower average daily gains, lighter carcass weights, deposited less internal fat and marbling, and had less tender steaks than the animals without lung lesions. For those of you that are selling freezer beef and have that close contact with your consumer, know that when you're treating that calf because it's got pneumonia, that you're impacting the steaks. And why is that? Because the most prevalent protein in a carcass is a type 2 collagen. And what happens as an animal ages, type 2 collagen is a spiral. Think of a rope, okay? Think of collagen as being a spiral. Now, as an animal ages, that collagen that is normally looks like a braided rope starts looking like a fishing net. It goes up and down and crosswise. And that same thing has been found to occur in cattle that are sick, that are mounting an immune response. I want to explain it just from a time standpoint. If any of you, and we've just come through COVID, so we all know people who were greatly impacted by COVID, who took a long time to recover. It takes just physiologically a year to get over a severe illness normally. Well, I just want to say this, and I don't mean anything by this. This is just science. We're mammals, cattle are mammals. Physiology from a time frame is the same thing. We have a 7-month-old calf or 8-month-old calf that we've weaned. We're feeding them hard these days. We're killing them at 18 months of age. We're killing them 10 months later. That's not enough time for everything to fully recover. And so it doesn't surprise me that they don't marble as well, because they're still doing tissue repair. We may not see it, but if you look at that hierarchy of nutrient use, maintenance, development, growth, lactation, reproduction, fattening, not only are they big and they have a maintenance, but they're still developing. They're redeveloping circulatory systems and they're repairing tissue. So the fact that cattle that have been sick have less tender steaks is not surprising from a collagen standpoint. In another study, lung lesions from respiratory disease were present in 33% of steers at harvest. Steers with lung lesions had lower average daily gain, lighter carcass weights, deposited less internal fat marbling, and their overall assessment was that if an animal is sick enough to be identified and treated, performance-reducing lung damage has already occurred. We're trying to keep it alive, but things have still gone wrong in the animal. Okay, this is another study, morbidity. Healthy animals, 1 antibiotic treatment, 2+. Days on feed went from 193 to 212. Average daily gain went from 1.44 to 1.24. That's a ½ pound less. Gross income per head fell from 856, and this is time sensitive, so these values don't hold up today. This was 2.7. But what you see is they went down even here $150, $170 per head. Okay. Another study, number of hospital visits. If they looked at 0, 1, or 2 hospital visits in this thing, in this particular study, average daily gain through harvest was not difference between 0, and 2. Carcass weight was lower. Marbling score was lower. These were not high-grading cattle. That small 31 means the select. The slight does not even get into its low select. Okay, but marbling score went down. Okay, just another study from Nebraska, 0, 1, or 2+. They lost 40 pounds. The average daily gain in pounds went from 3.1 to 2.9. Hot carcass weight went down by 28 pounds. Marbling score went from a small choice to a high select. Percentage choice went from 51% to 36%. And you can't have that today in the 20-25 cent choice select spread. Okay. Okay, so this is getting to the final stage of the talk. So I want you paying attention because you don't have another hour. Okay? I took the values in all those studies put together. And I want you to assume that at arrival at your feedlot, you have a 550-pound steer, and you're taking it to a 1,350-pound final weight. That's 800 pounds a gain. At 3.3 pounds per day gain, with a healthy calf, that's 242 days. These studies show a 6% reduction in average daily gain on average with a sick calf that's been treated. That's 3.1 pounds per day. So you've gone from 242 days to 258 days to get to the same final weight. That's 16 additional days with a yardage charge of 55 cents per head per day. And yardage is labor, electric, machinery, and bedding. That's the average charge that we're paying across the country, roughly. That's $8.80 more in yardage charges. Okay.
Now, that don't take into the account discounts that you get on like retaining ownership for the being in less quality animals, right?
We'll get to the next slide.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I just love giving him a hard time. Okay. Feed efficiency decreased approximately 10 to 15% in studies, so I'm using an average of a 12% decrease in feed efficiency. So with the feed to gain of 6.5 to 1 with healthy cattle, a 12% decrease would mean that my feed efficiency is now 7.3 to 1. So a healthy calf going from 550 to 1,350 pounds consumes approximately 5,200 pounds of feed. And I'm going to divert here. The other night when my wife said I wasn't paying attention to her, it's because I was putting these things together. She was right. This is really cool to me. A sick calf going from 550 to 1,350 pounds consumes approximately 5,840 pounds of feed. So that's 640 pounds more feed. Okay. The carcass weight on average varied between 3 and 6%, so I used 4.5% on average. So on 1,350 pound steer with 62.5% dressing percentage, which I would assume would be there for an average choice animal, that would be an 844 pound carcass. And a 4.5% reduction in carcass weight would be 38 pounds, so that takes it to an 806 pound carcass. So here's my example. How much does an animal getting sick cost? This is my healthy example. My feed's costing 13 cents a pound at 5,200 pounds, $676. My yardage for 242 days is $133. My 844 pound carcass weight at a 2.61, which was my choice price this week, that was worth $2,202. My carcass price, $2,202, minus my yardage plus feed, left me $1,393. Now, if I had a sick calf, my feed at 13 cents a pound, going to 5,840 pounds, went to 759. So my feed went from 759 up from 676. My yardage was $141 versus $133. My hot carcass weight of 806, at the same price per pound, assuming this graded choice, was $21.03. My carcass price minus my yardage plus feed gave me $1,202. So what I'm going here is I'm going from 1,393 to 1,202. So I'm losing $191. Now, really good question there. What if this animal doesn't grade choice? So, and that's what the data would say, but it probably wouldn't. So my conservative loss is $190.98 if there is no decrease in quality grade. But a USDA select deduction of 14 cents per pound brings it to $247 per pound times my reduced carcass price of $806, brings in $1,900, minus my feed and my yardage gives me $1,089. The expected loss with reduction in grading is $304. Those are today's real prices. So what I want you to understand is that all this stuff that I talk about, the science,